Welcome to the Alchemy of Abundance, and I'm your host, Tiffany O'Hearn. And this is a very special episode because this is a part two. So we very much encourage you and invite you to check back to part one. And we had Jessica Falcon with us, and we decided to do a part two. And so we're going to just dive into that. We'll put all of, her beautiful stuff into the show notes. But this, we really felt called to share, collectively with the audience. And so that's what this is. And let's see where it takes us. What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into relationships and all that that entails. It's a massive discussion, but we'll get to what's most alive today.
Right. And so when you think about relationships, what's the one thing or what's the couple of things that come to mind?
The very first thing when you say the word relationship is that our relationship with ourselves is what determines the quality of our relationship with everything and everyone else. And I say everything because I believe that we're in relationship with our body. We're in relationship with the earth. We're in relationship with what we ingest. We're in relationship with each other. If we are not in relationship with ourselves, and as we were briefly talking about before we started recording, our inner world, our own needs, the feelings that are coursing through us, the desires of our soul, if we're not hearing and seeing ourselves, then how can we expect to be seen or heard by others? But two, then we're not present enough to actually receive the other person either. And so if we want to relate, it requires that we be present, we be aware. We cannot relate to anything or anyone, in my experience, unless our heart is fully receiving both self and other. Otherwise, it's ego, it's mind, it's an interaction. Personally, interactions don't fulfill me, but relationships and connection do.
Yeah, like that depth too. And that the depth is created in the heart, right? It's
Yes.
created in the heart. It's not created in the ego. It's not created in the mind. But when we can fully express with our heart, and you're so right. Um, I don't know if right's the proper term, but you're I'm very much aligned with what you say when we're talking about love with ourselves first, right? And so there's something that I often say, which is we don't need to love others more. We have to love ourselves first, right? Because we have this idea, this notion that, well, I have a child, so now I'm everything to this child. I have a dog, now I'm everything to the dog. I have a husband, what? I have everything to this person. But that's not really it, right? And if we can't stand firmly rooted in our own love, it's going to come across in every relationship because it's going to be that unhealthy connection because we're not connected to self. We're not connected to the idea of love, the thought of love, the feel of love, that inner gnosis, that knowledge of what love really is.
Absolutely. And I think that that requires that we shift out of the cultural programming that we have received, especially as women, but all people have received, that it is selfish to think of yourself, right? Or that love comes at our expense, that love demands sacrifice. And these are all lies because love, true love, not codependent love, right? Codependent is not love, not attachment, unhealthy attachment, but true love that creates freedom in relationships requires that we access and source that love from within us. And then it overflows to the other. I think that's the way the mind can understand it. It's that we're accessing the love we are. We're allowing it to be us, to become us, which is a journey, right? To embody love, to embody the love that we are, which to me is feminine power. Then we allow that to overflow so that we're really just sharing our love. And when we can do that, like say a mother and a child, you also are teaching that child how to access love within, and you're not their only source of love, which makes them codependent as well. Right? So it shifts us out of that codependent dynamic, out of unhealthy and toxic relationships into sovereignty.
Yes. And how can we communicate, because communication is a huge part of this, right? Relationships in general. Not necessarily what we're saying, right? But there's an energetic communication, there's a spiritual communication. There's so many different levels of communication. And for me, it's more about how do I stay in my heart space, right? No matter what. And in that, you're filling another cup, right? Because it's not like, well, Jessica, sorry, I can't love you because I'm tapped out. Like, I got 15 people here, right? Because we can literally drive down the road and send love to 45 people. Why not?
It's
You know?
okay. Yeah. Because there is no limit to that kind of love when it's from overflow. And I was just writing down one of the things you're saying. First, the way you said we communicate primarily with our being is so beautiful. And I want to highlight that and maybe even talk more about that, about this
Yeah.
communication and relationship. When I hear you say about like filling the other's cup or filling our own cup, to me, that's what I would call the capacity to love, right? And our capacity to love another is intrinsically linked to our capacity to love ourselves. Because if we are not having compassion for ourselves, we're not going to have compassion for others. If we don't have boundaries, we're going to have too much resentment and bitterness built up to really allow that person to be who they are. If we are not expressing how their behavior impacts us because we're loving ourselves and having a boundary, then we're going to be thrusting that anger onto them or keeping a distance and creating energetic separation from the other in relationship. And so the more we can both increase our own capacity to love through the self-knowledge, through the embodiment of love, through the self-attunement to a higher frequency, and then we allow it to overflow to the other, it also requires that, well, if I love you enough to tell you the truth because love is truth. And so the more radically honest I can be with my inner experience, the more I can communicate that to you through an energetic boundary, through a spoken boundary, through truth, through expressing what I feel, not in a way that is demanding. Like, yes, but your truth is not ever going to condemn another person. Your
Right.
truth is spoken from your heart. It is communicated in a way that honors the truth of the other so that it can be received. Your truth is recognizing they have a choice. They do not have to give you what you need or want, right? Like, so our truth is that's a big deal just to go into that.
Right.
We get to communicate it in a way that the other person is also recognized as soft.
And that takes, it's super simple, but it's not easy for us in the world in which we live. And that's why these conversations and these experiences exist so that, hopefully you hear that one thing that opens up your heart even wider and allows and invites this higher level of like, yeah, I want to love myself. What I say to myself matters. What I do for myself matters. Right. Cause it's like, well, okay, I'm going to have a boundary. I have a boundary. Here's my boundary. See it? There we go. Right. But like you said, there's so many ways to communicate a boundary, you know, and being able to truly stand in your truth and witness another person and know in your heart, that's not my truth. And that's okay. Because if it's our truth, we don't need someone else to agree with us. We know it, right? That's the difference between feeling, I think, and knowing sometimes, because I have a knowing that I'm worthy and that I deserve certain things in life. I know it. I know it in my core, in my heart. I know it. And I'm sure you do as well, right? It's a knowing. And it deserves that capacity for us to witness that and honor that. And when I think about self love, pointing to the tree behind me, that there is a tree. And this is how I see us, right? Individually, is that we have the roots of us that are hidden. Then we have the base, right? And our love for others are the branches. And if our trunk isn't big enough, it's not able to support the limbs in the way we want. And so, how do we embrace and embody this vision of a tree? And what does your trunk look like? What are your roots like? I would
Mm.
start there because we can all expand and grow. It's
Mhm.
not, we're not done. This is where I'm at. This is my tree trunk. No, it can evolve and grow. And so can we.
And I think we both know that because we have evolved and grown. I know that the way I relate to people now is a complete 180 from the way that I used to relate to people because my relationship with myself shifted and I stopped seeking externally for other people to value me. So I say this with a lot of compassion, both for my own journey and the journey of, I think, what we all have to go through because we are so conditioned from past lives, from this life, to look for others to see us, to value us, to deem us worthy, to love us. We are taught love exists outside of us. And so we are literally today talking about a complete reversal of all the programming we've received and so much of the soul trauma, because it is the path to coming home to self, but it's the path of returning to source, to returning to truth, to returning to the divine that we are. And we're all going to have to walk this path at some point. Imagine if you're listening, you're walking this path in some way, shape, or form, or you wouldn't be listening. And so that path requires a pulling back of the ways that we source externally from others, which I like to see as our solar plexus putting cords out, and we're energetically siphoning off and needing and unhealthy attaching to, depending on these external sources with which to know ourselves, with which to value ourselves. And that the work is to pull these back while simultaneously anchoring into the self so that you are sourcing from your divinity. You are sourcing from soul. You are sourcing internally that love, that value, that belonging, that safety, that worth. And that is what allows you to truly see another without needing them to be something for you or to fulfill you or to demand that they be a certain way in order for you to love them. That all comes from that external sourcing, right? And so we often think that this path of relationship is just about feeling free yourself in a relationship. But the truth is, until you feel free to be you, the other person also is not going to feel free in that relationship.
Right. Because there's a stifling of self that presents, right? And it's also like if you're in a relationship, it's going to mirror back to you how you feel about yourself. Because if you feel unseen by another person, you likely don't feel seen in your life, or somebody wouldn't not see you the way that you present it. And I think that there's so much there, right? Like you said, we're sourcing it out when it needs to stay in house, right? And so, how do I, you know, because it's there, we all have it. And how do we cultivate intentionally that love within? Because that's where we're going to find the most beautiful relationships, and that they're not chaotic either. You know, they're not like, Jessica, you didn't call me. Why didn't you call me? You said you were going to call me. And now I'm like waiting and you're not calling me. And that's too much. That's not in flow. Right. And so, how do you intentionally be in a relationship in flow if you're not in flow with yourself? If you're not in that love with yourself? And it's not, I think it's also fair to say that we're not suggesting that every relationship that doesn't begin this way, is destined to fall apart, because there's also a harmony and a synergy between two people saying, here's I am and here I am. We're going to go down a different road intentionally, and we're going to choose different. We're going to speak to each other different. We're going to hold space for each other differently, because that all can exist. Don't you agree?
Yeah, because we have the capacity to shift out of old relationship patterns and both people have to be willing to do that inner work and to meet each other. I've been in a situation where I thought the spiritual lie, if I change because I create my reality, then that means the other person is going to change too. And that wasn't true because the other person is their own soul and had their own choice. And I ultimately had to make a choice for me. And I've also been in relationships in which both people are consciously cultivating a sovereign connection and freedom because the consciousness is there, the self-awareness is there, the self-responsibility is there to do that. And I want to go back to something that you said that I think ties into the answer to the question that you posed about cultivating that love for self. You mentioned that when we don't feel seen in relationship, and I know what that's like because there were many, many, many years when I did not feel seen in a relationship at all. And it's quite common. A lot of my clients have come to me with that feeling, whether they're in a relationship or just wanting to get out of repetitive cycles of relationships. And it's very common for women in particular because we haven't been historically seen in relationship. We were more of a possession rather than a partner. There's a difference, right? And so we're still trying to figure out that difference collectively and individually. I wasn't actually allowing the other person to see me because I wasn't revealing all of me, because I wasn't seeing my inner world. And when I did see my inner world, because I was always intuitive and sensitive, I didn't voice it. I didn't voice my boundary. I didn't voice my truth. I didn't voice aspects of self that I feared they wouldn't like, or that they would reject, or that they would abandon, which meant I wasn't actually allowing them to see me. And seeing me, when I finally did come to see me, seeing me meant I can't stay in a relationship with you because you don't see me, right? So instead of demanding the other person to see you, you see you, and either they follow along or they don't, right? But you see you enough to take action on your own behalf. And that is also how we cultivate the love within, is that we stop waiting. We stop waiting for other people to change, to shift, to agree, to give us permission. That's not sovereignty. That's not freedom. That's a demand, and that's giving your power away. So we stop waiting and we start inviting. We invite the other to meet us, but we don't go down to them. We rise and we invite them to rise to meet us. And there's a massive difference in how we approach those conversations in that way.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's so beautiful, that this expression, right? And, you know, we have these conversations and we know because we've experienced them, right? And so it's so easy to look and say, because I was this when I first started. I mean, I've had multiple journeys, but in hindsight, I can pinpoint some of these very clearly where I had to make a choice. Wait, you mean the other person's not changing? Which is a very hard thing, right? It's like if you don't like your partner as they are now, then that's for some inner work and some inner self-reflection, because we're not changing another person. It's not our job. We're not supposed to. Our job, if you want to call it that, or what we're being called to do, is to look within, is to be within, and the rest will show itself. How much can we trust in our divine self to do or to put us in the exact place? And that comes with trust in that inner knowing, in that inner heart within us. And one of the things that I was deeply calling in was connected relationships. And there has been an insurmountable flurry of these coming to me. And it's not because I just asked for them, no. It's because I'm open and ready to receive them. And that's also different, because if I can't come from the heart, then I'm not open to receive them. I'm open to, and I say this with love and compassion, but to control them. Because that's really, I think, one of the biggest chasms we face in a relationship is this idea of control. And we don't have it in anyone else. We only have it within. And so let's cultivate that control within. And to me, it's we can control how we show up and how we react, really, with work, right? It's not because, some of these are trauma responses and things like that, but you can get there. But it does take time and effort on your part.
And part of that releasing control and relationship dynamics is how I view that releasing those energetic cords going out and pulling them back in to source from within to be in our sovereignty. Because why do we control? I understand this because I tried to control those I didn't trust. I tried to control those I didn't actually like who they were. I tried to control those whom I couldn't accept their actions. And I ultimately realized it's because I didn't trust their level of consciousness. I didn't trust them to see me. I didn't trust them to hear me. I didn't trust them to value and respect me. And so I tried to control because I didn't trust them and their consciousness to take care of themselves. And I was controlling because I wasn't feeling safe as a result of that lack of resonance in our levels of consciousness. And we are going to try to control when we don't feel safe, we don't trust. And what that ultimately does come back to is how do I then create that safety and trust within myself so that I can release the need to control and also accept the reality of who's in front of me.
Right. Because it is ours. It is us, and I think safety is such an important word for us to truly embrace. But again, we can't make others in charge of our safety because that's only for us to determine and define.
Mm.
And it evolves. Level of safety at 5 is a little different than at 20, than at 40, isn't it? And we continue down that road.
And that cultivation of safety is such a journey. It's one that I'm hugely passionate about. I think I mentioned last time that that level of internally sourced safety is a key component of my work. And nervous system, of course, is a part of that safety. You mentioned earlier that nervous system work and it's key, but the nervous system is regulated by our heart, which is the largest electromagnetic field in our body. Our nervous system connects to our capacity to feel what we feel, to let emotions move through us. Our nervous systems are related to our capacity to root into soul and not into our purely 3D physical reality. All of these affect our level of safety to be who we are. I think the biggest thing is that almost every single person I've ever coached, worked with, met, talked to, and myself. So maybe there's a random soul out there who hasn't experienced this, but I haven't yet seen it or come across it on a subconscious level, right? This was not conscious for me for the first 25, 30 years of my life. But that it is really about a deep-seated fear that I am not going to be loved for who I am. And so I have to adopt these things, do these things, control the other person, demand these things, hide these things, fear these things, which create the unhealthy relationship dynamics. The more you can root into that inner love, that inner state of love, our inner divinity, divine love, our true sovereignty, because sovereignty is our divinity. Our divinity is our sovereignty. And in aligning every aspect of our life to that, the more we can do that, then we no longer fear that the other person cannot love us. We love ourselves enough to speak our truth. We love ourselves enough to show up anyway. We love ourselves enough to say no when it doesn't serve. We love ourselves enough to do that and to have the difficult conversations. We cannot get through life without difficult conversations. We cannot actually feel fulfilled without intimacy. But all of that does start within. It does not mean that you can control everything in the relationship when you are doing everything, the right way. What it means is that you are able to respond to what's in front of you because your nervous system is regulated to truth and to love.
And it invites that autonomy individually. when we can step into our heart space and respond to our partners or the relationship and not react. Because to me, a reaction is more of a trauma based response, whereas an actual respond, it invites clarity. Like, what do you mean? Can we ask that a different way? And it's that ability to hold space. We have to be crystal clear of what holding space is. And it's this allowance that whatever you say, Jessica, I'm intentionally holding it in my hands. I'm not offering you advice. I'm not trying to change your reality, but I'm lovingly holding what you say with compassion. And it doesn't have to align with me. And it's okay. And that to me is the most beautiful thing we can gift, not only ourselves, because if we can't hold space for ourselves, again, we can't do it for others in the way in which we're being directed to do.
Because the ego is what takes things personally and makes it about us, when it actually is just that other person expressing themselves, which allows us to then hold and receive what they say with love, not pushing it away, not defending, right? Not arguing. Okay, maybe you don't agree, but you can still receive, say, your partner's expression in love and then voice what your feeling and experience is. And hopefully they will receive that in love. And then you have the conversation that creates connection and understanding and empathy and compassion to come into individual choice that becomes a collective choice for the relationship. That's sovereignty.
Yes. Yes. And it's so freaking beautiful. And we all can have that. We all get to experience that if we are willing to explore and truly, humbly honor whatever's in there. You know, there's in my practice, there's something that we do. And right here on your chest is the kidney meridian. And our kidney is our chi, it's our life force. When I'm in a session with a client, this will come up often. And I actually invite it as much as I can, not in a session with somebody, but if somebody is open to it, like I do it with my daughter a lot. If she starts going, okay, this is bad and, like that, even though this feels really hard right now, it's okay. I still love and accept myself, even though I'm feeling chaotic inside. And this is where, like, you also don't have to be high vibe, where it's like, no, I fucking don't feel good. I still love and accept myself. Because when was the last time? And this is one simple way to start to infuse that, which is just honoring how you feel. We don't need somebody else to honor it for us. We just honor it for ourselves. Even though I don't know why that person triggered me, it's okay. I still love, deeply love, and accept myself. And you watch yourself shift. And it's a very simple thing to do for ourselves. Because again, when was the last time us collectively, we just honored how we felt without judgment and with ease and levity? It's okay. I'm experiencing this world too. I'm not going to be all high vibe all the time. And things are going to be hard. I know it's hard. It's okay. I still love and accept myself.
I'm so passionate about that. I'm glad you brought that up because our capacity to feel our emotions also increases our capacity to allow another to have their own emotions. And the main way that we can do that is to accept what is and to stop identifying them as who and what we are. And when we're trying to stay quote high vibe, when I hear people say, oh man, I got triggered and I lost my high vibe state. Like I've heard people say that, right? What they're saying is, I couldn't accept what is and love it and let it be simply that. I made a story about it. that it was bad or wrong for me to actually have an experience that I was having. And the way to truly stay high vibe is to be anchored in your soul and your heart, regardless of what you're feeling and experiencing.
And resistance, you know, we choose resistance over anything else, but that's not flow. And it's okay. Things are going to hurt. Things are going to be awesome. Things are going to be loving. They're going to be all of the things, but we can still stand incredibly rooted in our mind, in our body, in our soul, amidst whatever it is, because we know we're safe. We know we're loved because we know, because we are, because we're doing it for ourselves.
And that's a journey. We're talking about the final version of that journey. And I just want to point that out for the listener that to get to that point where you're not triggered, where you're able to truly hear and see, where you're able to have that capacity is the journey of self-love, is the journey of sovereignty, is the journey of healing your nervous system and releasing the trauma that has been the trigger that has kept you outside of yourself. Because in order to come back into self, true self, soul self, divine self, the ancient the ancients understood that that requires healing the traumas, recalibrating the nervous system, healing the false identities and roles. That's the work. So the journey is to heal all of that. And then as you create that literal energetic spaciousness in your system, in your physicality, and your life force is activated, then you have the capacity to not let the trigger have control over you. It doesn't mean that you're never triggered, right? It's not like this state of ultimate perfection that we reach, but it means that you have a greater capacity to literally hold space within you and for others. And so that's how we increase our capacity to love. I mean, sovereign, not
Right.
perfect, sovereign. And that is really the journey. So if, anyone is having a relationship struggle, my soul took me through many relationship struggles on purpose to help me see the ways in which I was denying myself so that I could reclaim myself, to help me see the ways I wasn't speaking my truth so that I could reclaim my voice, to help me see the ways I was fearing my sexuality or fearing my power so that I could reclaim my sexuality and reclaim my power, right? So any sort of relationship, anything, the first thing to do is to look within or to receive that support from us, from others out there doing this deep level work, because it is about receiving support because we can't see what we can't see,
Right.
right? So that you can literally shift. I know I imagine it's similar with you, but I know I help people shift the energetics, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual roots. You can't do this with affirmations. You can't do this with your mind. This is deep level soul work. It's a reclamation. And the result is pure freedom within, which creates freedom in your relationship. So if we want to feel free in your relationship, you have to free yourself.
Right. And really invite that spaciousness in. And, again, to your point, we were right expressing sort of, and I don't know if it's the end, because I think that as long as we're humans in this space, that how much I heal allows spaciousness, but it doesn't shut down the fact that there's more healing because I'm going to have more experiences and more experiences are going to teach me, right? But if I have that spaciousness, I can do it with curiosity. I can do it in response to something and not in resistance or chaos, because that takes us out of our alignment. And I think that something that's really coming up for me spiritually now is, am I living in my integrity? And that requires a deep dive into all of my relationships as well. And I was just talking to an individual on Sunday, and we were talking about relationships. And as I'm expressing about my divorce from my own personal experience, not from the others, right? It occurred to me a very big wound had just surfaced. I said I was very lonely in my marriage, and then I stopped and I said, I've been lonely throughout my relationships, and I didn't realize it or embrace it until I spoke it. And then I said, tomorrow, tomorrow, we're handling that core wound, because it is, in fact, a deep core wound that I have and hold or had and held.
Mm.
And that's what we're talking about too, right, Jessica? When we guide our clients, it's to lovingly hold these parts of ourselves, witness them through and with our clients while they do the work of releasing. And I know it from my clients, but I also know it within me. When I'm expressing this loneliness and what am I here to heal? And I start writing down these programs within myself, I am weeping. And then I'm not. And this freedom comes spiraling out, right? And it might not be felt right away because energies take time to upend and resettle. But I share this because I know it to be true. Not only because I guide my clients, but I guide the heck out of myself. Right?
Which is what gives us the capacity to guide others so deeply. I think it would be, oh, I don't know quite the right word. It would be mm, a disservice
Yes.
to do this kind of work and not truly embody the energetic shifts and embody the transformation, because that is what enables, at least this is how I see it. I have codes within me that have been activated through my own inner work, through my own transformation. And those are codes that just by being in my frequency, people are able to open within them, help them activate their own codes, right? Because I'm able to see, I'm able to feel, I'm able to know, and I've been there. And I can hold a higher frequency and channel higher frequency energies in my system because I'm not carrying the density and the heaviness. I know what that was like. I used to carry a lot of heaviness, lifetimes of trauma and fear of being me, fear of showing up, fear of being seen, fear of my power, fear of my sexuality, fear of my truth, all of it, right? And of course, all that meant that I was attracting relationships in which I was re-experiencing that because my soul had to get to the other side and had to see it. So releasing all of that density allows me, as I imagine it allows you, to then hold a higher frequency and vibration for the transformation to occur. Otherwise, it doesn't occur. It doesn't occur.
Right. And we don't need to do that. I mean, we truly have all of the answers within. How silent are you willing to get? And how much are you willing to hear? Right? Because, there's no illusion here that you're going to listen to this podcast and go, on a pilgrimage and come back healed and saved. No, that'd be great. And probably not. And that's okay. But we can chip away, if that's an appropriate word, right? We can see ourselves. Where do we want to be? And that path is through us. It's not through someone else.
I'm going to say we do more than chip away because that's my experience. That when we work with our divinity and source frequency, I think we can literally blow apart defragmentation and create unity within. And that it's more than chipping away. I think that's the old paradigm that didn't understand frequency, that didn't understand energy, that was working to heal the ego from the ego. And that when we really connect to these higher vibrational frequencies, to our star codes, to our divine codes, to the infinite wisdom in our bodies, to Gaia as a conscious entity, we're literally allowing the diamond light we are to shine brightly. We are shining that light through the density and creating massive shifts very quickly. Because yes, I do think that up until now, we have been focusing on healing and healing and healing. And I know you mentioned this earlier, that the earth has already shifted her frequency into a 5D frequency and above. And that it's not so much about when you get to a certain point. Yes, depending on where you are on your journey, there's a lot of healing. And when you get to a certain point in that process, it's no longer about healing as it is about activating more and more of our gifts, more of our multidimensional capacities, more and more love, more and more of our divinity. And so, yes, that might create some healing, but I'd rather focus on who we're becoming than who we're leaving, right?
I love that. And thank you for reframing that from that old paradigm, because it is true what you're just lovingly expressed there, because we can make these more quantum intentional leaps
Yeah.
and become or be that person that is in full alignment because we have more spaciousness, right? To invite it. And I think like curiosity is one of our greatest resources. It's not judgment, being super curious about ourselves. What made me respond or react that? Okay, what's the program there? I wasn't feeling heard. Okay, so maybe I need to, right? And it's that inner walk back, because we're not going to find it in another person, right? We're having my experience and you're having yours, but now we're having a collective experience. And can we hold space for all three? Because we're going to end this podcast and I'm going to say, oh, wow, that was a really great podcast, this and this. But it's not going to be the same thing that you take away. And it's probably not going to be the same thing that our listeners are taking away, right? Because we're all coming from a different space and place of time. And I think there's truth in honoring that too, right? We're on different journeys. And whatever called you to listen to this is for you to know and for you to, be curious about.
And it's that three: holding space, individual, and a collective is that sovereign relationship. So I think that's a beautiful place to remind each of us that how we choose to show up in our individualness is and does affect the collective. And that capacity that you have to deepen into yourself and your truth, your sovereignty, your power is in love is really also the only thing that you take with you in your consciousness. We are one, but you can't experience union with another without union with yourself. And so the more you are in union with you and your soul truth, your deep truth, your true self, that is what you take with you. That is eternal. That is infinite. That can never be taken. It can never be denied. You don't divorce from that, right? You don't. That is the thing that we are the most true to. And so whatever we have to go through to get there, personally, I was devoted. I was devoted 120% to that union. And I still am, no matter what. That's number one.
Yes. And I really admire that because it is a devotion. And I think we actually said that in our last conversation.
We
We were
did.
talking about the devotion to self. And that's what we're speaking. And I think that that's really what's brought us together, is that devotion towards being who we are, right? Not just what people think of us or what we want people to share or see. It's that infinite connection that we have to our sovereignty and our earth, right? Like the spirit, the body, and all of it, in looking for a different way. And I think that that was a lot of the loneliness I felt as a child, was looking at things and saying, no, I don't think it's supposed to be this way. But everyone tells me they're an adult and I'm a child, so it doesn't matter. And that was a lot of the loneliness I felt throughout my life, was I don't think it's supposed to be this way. It shouldn't be this hard. And now really understanding that it's not an outward, it's an inward. And having that shift. And recently, more recent, maybe a couple months ago, when I really, really embraced and really, because I've, again, this devotion, right? But now people are witnessing this wholly that have known me. And they say, Tiffany, you're different. What did you do? I said, I went in within. What do you mean? Well, I just went within. I found me. I'm still finding it, right? But most of me is in me so beautifully right now. And I imagine the same is true for you.
Yeah. And it's beautiful to behold.
It is. And it's these gifts that we have. And like you were talking about before with that spaciousness and opening up these gifts, is the ability to have that gift to love self more because it's felt throughout. And if we can love ourselves, people feel it unintentionally, of course, right? Some are stirred in a beautiful way and some aren't. And that's their journey. It's not ours to own, but we can stay true to who we are. Yeah. This has been a beautiful conversation in every way. And I want to thank you for allowing and inviting again this conversation to happen and take place and to share because I think that there's, kind of what we said before, like there's a high vibe conversation, that we're really having. And I think the message, if I were to break it down and somewhat simplify it, is how can you just go deeper in, you know? And it doesn't have to be all the way. Even just a little is okay.
And allow your insides to be revealed to the outside. I'll add that because I think that's what so many people are afraid to do.
Hmm. And that's what glowing really is. When our insides are expressed through our outsides, right? That inner and that outer. And it's a really beautiful thing. And I'm hoping that I trust that it's felt. I see it within you. And I
And
thank you.
Mhm.
And I thank you for all that you do for humanity.
I'm grateful we could have this conversation. I'm grateful to the listeners who have the consciousness to hear this, to be in this space, because it means that you're a leader of consciousness. Because what we're talking about are the pivot points that we have to make individually and collectively to shift into a new reality on this planet. And it's not necessarily an easy shift, but it's a necessary one. And it's a shift that we are literally being asked to make by the planet. What I do believe is that we are here to embody our divinity, to reclaim our sovereignty, to be the love that we are. And that is the shift. And so it happens individually. And then the collective shift takes place, which means it is your responsibility, not only for the world, but for yourself, for your soul to return to source, to journey that you're invited to make in this conversation.
Mm. That is so beautiful. And it feels so real for me. And I hope, I trust that you're feeling it too, right? Because we do have that. And you're right. It is our right. It is our gift to humanity to heal and to move intentionally through life with love. And I will just say this real quick. And so we were driving up towards Vermont and I pull over at this gas station because there wasn't many. And this woman I thought was going through, but she wasn't. She stopped at the pump. And so I have to use the bathroom now. I kind of just went around her and I parked the car and I went in. And as I came out, she said, "Excuse me, do you have a second?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "I really need your help." And I'm like, "Yeah, what do you need?" She goes, "Could you maybe not next time drive through like you did? Because my grandson almost got out." And I said, "I am so sorry. I'm so grateful that your grandson didn't get out. And I deeply apologize that I wasn't as aware as I want to be in that moment." No excuse, right? And she just looked at me and she was like, "Thank you so much." And I was like, "Thank you so much. And I wish you a beautiful day." And I truly meant that because there's also these little gifts that we get to show us how far we've come because the ego would have said, mm-mm. Not my problem. But the heart says, I am so sorry. And thank you for showing me that. And we get to have these little experiences and shifts. And the woman, I'm telling you, she genuinely looked startled that I accepted it. And that's okay. Right. But it helped her maybe stand up for something again within herself, you know? And we do have that responsibility, I feel.
I got chills when you shared that. And I think that's like the perfect bow on this gift of this conversation because it's like that is you being able to receive her and receive yourself simultaneously.
In all the experiences, right? And so, Jessica, just like we did last week, I know that there's some messages here that you have for the listeners, and I would love to hear them. It doesn't there's no you whatever you feel divinely guided to share.
Oh, let's see. Let me just tune in and see what, because I feel like we've already shared so many. Let me just see
Mhm.
what if anything else wants to come through. Little light language wants to come through again. So I'll maybe interpret it after, but it just wants to come through as an encoding and an activation. Vandaya ketikai nai. Hekko shakalakatina ya. Kotiana ye. Ha na ya. Opening your heart and allowing the wisdom, the revelations, the insights that you've garnered to travel down into your womb, energetic womb, man or woman, into your root and ground themselves so that they may blossom in your own divine timing and open the doors that are ready to be opened within you. Hokiayat. And so it is, and so it is, and so it.
Thank you.
Thank you for such a powerful conversation. I so appreciate the sovereignty of the space and conversation. Grateful.
Likewise. Very much so. And, to the listeners, you know, we got love. It's all love. And it can be scary, but go in, check it out, experience it, try it on because it feels amazing. And of course, if this aligns with you and you're open to feeling the next highest frequency of yourself, Jessica's here and we'll include all of her information in the show notes. You're not alone because you have yourself. And I want to honor that for all of us. And I want to, again, thank you, Jessica, and thank you to the listeners. And may we all drop into that heart space. Until next time, I wish you all truly a beautiful life. Thank you.